Hello, everybody. It is your favorite day of the week. It is another day of the Reality Reading Rainbow, where we talk about books written by reality stars, especially those from Bravo, and try to make sense of them. I am Les Kirkendall Barrett. Hello, Victoria Wood.
Hi, Les. Hi, everyone. Super excited to be here. And guess what? Today we're talking about Chesapeake Babes.
Yes, we are still talking about our friend's book, our friend Dave Quinn's book, Not All Diamonds and Rosé, and we are in the home stretch. We're like almost done. We've been talking about this book for a long time.
Yes, it's been a long ride, but you guys, it's like 500 pages almost. Yes. So it's a lot of content, it's a lot of Bravo, but we've been breaking it down with you and for you. And if you've been here since our first episode, if you've been here since Dave's interview, again, thank you so much for listening. And yeah, very excited. We're on the home stretch.
And don't forget, we're talking about the chapter here on our regular episode, but we do have an after show. And on the after show was when we get down and dirty and dish the dirt. And you can find that after show on Patreon. And, you know, just go to Patreon and go to the Reality Reading Rainbow. And the way it's set up, you know, we'll take whatever you give us. If you got $1, great. If you have $100, great. If you have $1,000, oh my God, we love you, love you. And actually, hey, we love, you know, what we understand, times are tough right now. So the fact that you can help us with anything is greatly appreciated. And if you can't, well, fine. Listen to us anyway, because, you know, we like having you here. And well, first of all, I got to tell you, out of all of the Housewives, this is my favorite Housewives theme song.
I know you love it. I love like, the franchise too, you guys.
It's like, boom. Which, a bit of trivia, did you know that the theme song for Potomac, that's basically like a type of music that's centered in the Maryland area?
Okay, no, I did not know that.
And that's while we're talking, I'll Google it to get the actual name, but it is an actual type of music.
Right. That's awesome. I mean, just to make things clear, you guys, we're talking about part 8 in Not All Diamonds and Rosé. Earlier, I had said Chesapeake Babes, but we're really talking about the Real Housewives of Potomac. If you're reading along with us, that's page 391. The Real Housewives of Potomac premiered January 17th. 2016. And I'm very eager to hear what Les is saying about their theme music, because I absolutely love it. It has me want to, you know, go out there, Les, in a fabulous outfit, my favorite shoes, and just get to step in. It has that vibe, that energy. It just, you know, click. It just makes you want to go. But I love the theme song, but I also love the women of Potomac.
And I'm still Googling, but I'll have it by the end of the episode.
No worries. Well, you guys, let's get straight into the Real Housewives of Potomac. Again, this premiered in 2016, and the chapter of the book opens with a quote from none other than the Grand Dame of Potomac, Miss Karen Huger. Yes. And the quote is, "I always felt that if Bravo ever came to Potomac, beating the grass, looking for housewives, my name would come to the top." So I guess Miss Karen over here was feeling herself and, you know, kind of saying right off the bat, if they're going to have a show, I have to be on it. But the chapter actually opens with Charisse Jackson Jordan. She's a first season housewife, you know, she was an OG, and she knew that casting for the show would have been an uphill battle. And we also had a casting director saying that the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area is not like New York, Los Angeles, or Atlanta, because people in this particular world don't want to be on TV. Again, this is kind of, giving me a vibe similar to the Real Housewives of DC, which, by the way, has a very short chapter in this book. And we have that episode over on the after show. And for the Real Housewives of DC, it was kind of a similar kind of thing. They had a hard time casting. It's a very interesting neighborhood. So if you want to hear or take on the Real Housewives of DC, head on over to the after show. Yes. But even here in Potomac, they were having casting troubles as well. I mean, Les, what did you think about just the early lines in the book when they were referencing just the trouble they were going to have casting?
Right. Well, okay, so at this point, it actually, through the chapters, it basically sounds on like it tracks, and it basically seems like in all of the franchises, there was one woman who actually got everybody together, kind of like, New York, it was Jill, in Atlanta, wasn't it Deshawn? Who was it? Deshawn?
Yeah, Deshawn. No,
Deshawn. So it tracks that. And this one, it was Charisse, who, by the way, said that she didn't even want to be in the show.
I know, that was super, super, super interesting. And what I find, notable, because Potomac has become, or I should say, Potomac is known as one of those housewives franchises that's all Black housewives, similar to your Atlanta. However, when they were kind of, organizing this franchise, they made it super clear that they weren't looking to duplicate what was happening in Atlanta.
Right.
But they wanted, and this is how they described it to Charisse, the Black version of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. So that was fascinating, because Charisse was saying, to be quite honest, they don't flaunt their money like that over on that side of the country.
And I agree with her, it's, in DC, because it is in DC area where people are more, concerned about their reputations. So people wouldn't be so eager to be on camera. It's not like Beverly Hills where women are like, oh my God, put me on camera. It's the opposite, where my husband has this important job. It may or he might or might not be a high level in the government. We don't want that attention on ourselves.
Right, absolutely. But Charisse was kind of, I would say, the center of the Real Housewives of Potomac. She was the catalyst. She was the person who was bringing the women together. And the first call, right, that was made, because she said, yes, she'd help them with casting. And the first call was Miss Giselle Bryant.
Yay.
I mean, what did you think about that?
Well, and it's so funny because lately, and especially, our friend Dave has said this, and other people have said this, that like, Giselle, I guess, is supposedly the one person who gets the assignment, and she's kind of like a Rena, where she knows what she's here to do and she does it, and supposedly off camera everybody loves her, and she's supposedly like the coolest woman, one of the coolest women in Housewives, from what I hear.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on the show, I'm like, Giselle, sometimes I want to smack her so hard, but you know what? I do see value in Giselle being on the show. Charisse was actually saying she never wanted to do the show. Her husband wasn't supportive, but I loved reading Giselle's take, because Giselle was like, look, I'm an independent woman. I don't have, anyone really to consult. The only people I have to talk to are my daughters. And she did that.
Right.
And I love this quote, and I want to share it with you guys. when Giselle was explaining to them that, you know, by being on the show, she'd have to open up her life and that people are going to say bad things about their mom because she's talking to the girls. And she said her girls were like, Mom, we know who you are and love you no matter what. And that made her feel confident going forward. I think the one thing we can all agree on, Giselle fans and not so fans alike, we love seeing Giselle's interactions with her girls. She looks like she really has a solid relationship with them. And just to kind of have these girls sign off on saying, Mommy, we don't care what they're saying about you online. We know you, we love you. I mean, what more could a person need?
Exactly. Oh, I found it. Okay, so the music the theme song is it's called the Piedmont Blues, and it's a kind of blues music that is with, you know, Virginia, North Carolina, Maryland. Okay, and you know what song is? Okay. Oh my God. Okay, so I remember that song "Doin'," but that's this type of music as well.
Oh, see, if I had to guess, I would have said it would have been like blues meets jazz, you know, kind of hot stepping kind of vibe. I love it. It's so upbeat. If I was walking down the street, I would want to be walking down the street to this song. I love it. I love it.
So and actually, full disclosure, my sister lives in this area. She doesn't live in Potomac, but she lives in Bethesda, which is like the next neighborhood over. And like, I guess Giselle lives in Bethesda.
Yes.
And so my niece, and I think you've talked to my niece
on Clubhouse. Yeah.
Well, I was talking to my niece the other day, and so my niece actually has met a few of the Potomac housewives, which I will get to when we get to that.
Yes, and you know what, you guys, we're really going to spill some tea on these housewives in the after show, but we're going to get through casting real quick. So we have Charisse, we have Giselle, and the next call on the list was Miss Karen Huger. And I just want to say, producers love Giselle. They found her super fascinating. So I just want to put it out there. They love some Giselle.
Right.
Next up was Karen. And I love the description that these producers and casting people and just, you know, everyone in the sphere, but their description of Karen took me out. They said, Karen is like a soap opera star. I mean,
true. True.
I know. I got that vibe. Oh my God, what's the name of oh God, you have the author and then she had a sister.
Jackie Collins and Joan
Collins. Yes. Karen gives me that Jackie Collins vibe.
Totally.
I don't know. So when they mentioned, you know, Karen gives them soap opera vibes, I was just like, yes, this is, you know, that's who I'm feeling. So they were actually saying that Karen was just like Giselle in a lot of ways. They both had big personalities, big stories, and so on. But what did you think of the description? So we both agree Karen's a soap star, but the casting director was saying, because remember, they wanted this to be the Black Beverly Hills, not Atlanta, the Black Beverly Hills. And they compared Karen to Lisa Vanderpump. What did you think?
Get that. Oh, I totally get that. Because, you know, in Beverly Hills, Lisa Vanderpump was like the grand, like she was like the matriarch of the show. She was the oldest one. She was, you know, kind of everybody deferred to her. She ran shit behind the scenes. So I agree. Now, Vanderpump is more savvy than Karen Huger, but I get that vibe for sure.
Okay, awesome. Next up on our casting list is Katie, was it Roost or Rost?
Katie Rost, which bing, 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 bing. That's one of the people who my niece knows because, so Katie Rost is, she's biracial and she's Jewish. My niece is biracial and Jewish. My sister's African American. My brother-in-law is white. They're bringing their kids up Jewish, and so the biracial Jewish community is in the DC area is like a very small community, and so my niece, like, so that it's basically they're kind of in like the same circle, and so yes, my niece knows Katie.
Wow. Okay, well, you guys are going to be dishing on Katie in the after show. But I found Katie's, story for the book, because Katie spoke for the book, that she said she understood Charisse was the unofficial casting agent, but she wasn't even friends with Charisse, but Charisse knew of her and that, Katie would make a good story. And the casting agent was saying, Katie, she's originally from the area. She's like the young adult version of the Giselle and the Karens and the Charisse. So Katie kind of gave, that dimension to the show. So it was interesting to see the casting agents say that.
And Katie, from what I remember, Katie was the one who was actually from like old money.
Yes. She added that, kind of prestige, because these other women, and I mean, no offense to them, but, they all married successful, husbands, successful men. Katie's background would be more of, the children of these kinds of women. Right. So for example, Giselle's girls would grow up to be like Katie's, where, they were raised in this area, around very affluent people. And Katie does give that vibe. Now, so we have, how do we have it now? So we have Charisse, we have Giselle, we have Karen, we have Katie. Right. They still have a few more openings. So next up is Robin. Right. And Giselle passed along Robin's name. And I found it interesting. And I mean, look, it doesn't have to be exactly that same way, but it's like Charisse was head of like the NBA Wives Association. I'm like, girl, you should have gone to Robin straight away. But Giselle was the one who recommended Robin. And she calls Robin her best friend here. So that was quite interesting.
And Giselle was also like, look, this is my friend. She's divorced from her husband, but they still live in the same house and sleep in the same bed and go.
The truth is, that's a good story, because that's not normal. Okay, I hate using the word normal, but it's not often we see separated people living in the same house, raising their kids, sleeping in the same bed. But anyway, I found it funny because Giselle's like, oh yeah, I recommended my friend Robin. I just told you, Charisse is head of the NBA Wives. She knows Robin. So Robin says, in true Robin fashion, the way I remember it, Giselle and Charisse both called me. I'm like, who called you first? Right. Robin can't stick to a story for her life.
And this is once again where the book does its little voodoo spell that I talk about, where, it's made me like people who I didn't like before. And this chapter actually made me like Robin. I like Robin.
Well, I feel the same way, because I was not a Green-Eyed Bandit fan. However, I'm splitting the two, and I'm now, as our good friend Stephanie says, we're in the Dixon district. That's what she calls it. So we're in the Robin Dixon district. But yeah, what's fascinating is that the producers and casting agents were saying, Robin, okay, she's a very beautiful woman, fascinating story, but she turned out to be one of the fan favorites in the first season.
And I like that they pointed out, though, that Robin is us. Robin is the audience.
Yeah.
And so that's what made me like her, because I get her, because Robin is the one that kind of hangs back. But if you look at it from a standpoint of Robin is observing And she then asks the questions that we want to know, which she really does.
No, she does. You know, I never thought about it that way, but reading the book, I was like, huh. You know, so I started to appreciate Robin a bit more.
Yeah.
Now, fun fact, you guys, in the book, I discovered that was it. That was the cast to start. This cast to start was Charisse, Giselle, Karen, Katie, and Robin. Ashley Darby, though she is an OG, she was there from the first season, but Ashley never joined the cast until 1 month after they started filming.
And that explains everything.
Because
remember when they were like just so anti-Ashley, they did not like her. And then on the other side of things, Ashley came in hot. But what I gathered from this is producers kind of jazzed Ashley up to come in hot.
No, absolutely. And, you know, again, this girl's coming in a month after this cast has been established. I think they kind of maybe put a bug or two in her ear because Ashley came in way too hot. The background on Ashley is that she's 26 years old when she joined the show, former beauty queen, married to Michael Darby, who's an Australian real estate developer who is 29 years her senior. You guys, she was made for television. I'm sorry, she was. I mean, as the show goes on, we realize Michael Darby's a big mess. It's also one of the highlights in the book, but we'll go into more tea in the after show. But what did you think about the Ashley of it all, though?
Well, what they pointed out, which I did not observe until this, is Ashley did not give a fuck because she didn't need this for the money. She didn't know any of them. So she was loyal. She had no one to answer to, so she could do whatever she wanted.
Yeah.
She had no one to answer to. And I now think them getting her and waiting a month in was genius.
Absolutely. Again, I've always said that the best housewives, in my opinion, are the housewives who have nothing to lose. They don't care as much about being on television. They're not trying to push a business or an agenda. They're just there to have a good time. And I think Ashley's just that. Ashley's very secure in her life. I mean, I know we can dice up her relationship, which we will do in the after.
Which we will do.
Yeah, but I think she's very secure. And it's for that reason she has no problem pumping her breast milk, stirring some shit and jumping in her car and leaving.
And because look at it this way. They were talking about how like Charisse was saying like she had been friends with Giselle for something like 18 years. Giselle and Karen had known each other for like 15 years. Giselle and Robin were best friends, you know? And then on Ashley's side, we knew that Ashley had a prenup, so it didn't matter. She was gonna, if her marriage ended, she's still gonna get money, you know? Yeah. Now, in the meantime, she's popped out 2 kids, so you know she's really set.
Yeah.
And so she literally came in there with, I'm just gonna do this, I'm just gonna have fun, and I don't care about any of you bitches. I'm just gonna do whatever.
That's for sure. That's definitely Ashley. So you guys, that's the cast of season 1. We'll be talking more in the after show, but let's get into the real tea, the meat of the matter in the book. And the first thing I have flagged, and if you're reading along with us, this is page 395. And this is Robin Dixon's season 1 off-camera freakout at producers when Ashley Darby discussed one Dixon's finances. Now, I know one Dixon wishes he wasn't there right now, which he wasn't there right now.
I'm so happy that one Dixon is not here.
I'm telling you. And I think Ashley's probably lucky one Dixon was not there right now.
Which, if you don't know this, that was from one of the reunions that Robin said that.
Yes. That's not my line. It's a Robin line. But you guys, in the book, and this is in Robin's own words, and I'm going to read just this quick section. Robin said, on one of the first phone calls she had with production, she remembers being asked, is there anything off the table? And she said, when it comes to one, his personal business and his financial issues, they're not on the table. He doesn't want to talk about any of that. Now, I find it super interesting that they're like, oh, is there anything off the table? Yeah, we're not talking about one and his money. And we end up talking about one and his money.
But what it sounds like is they pulled Ashley aside and told her past that.
Listen, if Robin said she told production not to do it, and then Ashley comes out there and do it, yeah, I think, something happened. And Katie was actually saying she filmed with Ashley at a park so she could meet her children. But before she came over, she was saying Ashley was talking to producers for a really, really long time. And when she was on the swing set, she brings up Robin's finances, saying that she had Googled them. Now, I don't know, but I'm just saying, it sounds to me like Ashley brought the producers bug on the show.
I could see the producers going, hey, Ashley, come here. I'm going to Google something. Read it. What do you think? Okay, go.
Oh my gosh.
Or, hey, Ashley, Google Juan Dixon and I'll watch and let's see what comes up. And then,
So I find it interesting, even Robin saying in her mind, Ashley didn't do this on her own. It was definitely producer driven. So the fact that, again, Robin herself feels this type of way, I'm just like, okay, that makes sense.
And now also, they're years in, so now they know the deal. And so Robin knows how, they know what's what they're on season 6. Season 5. So they know how the shit works.
Yep, absolutely, for sure. But that was one of the biggest things that happened. This all happened in season 1. Again, Robin going berserk on Ashley. But it was just, yeah, for me, I remember watching that live. It was, in my opinion, iconic. It was a moment for sure. But the next major thing that happens in the book, and again, you guys, we'll be discussing way more in detail in the after show, but the next big thing in this chapter, in my opinion, was one of the most scandalous moments in housewife history. And I don't mean Potomac history, I mean housewife history. And if you're reading with us, this is on page 410, okay? And on page 410, the book gets into the Michael Darby butt groping allegations. I'm sorry, you guys, like this was the biggest thing. It was, for me, the most scandalous thing. I mean, I know we live in a time now when housewives are being accused of things, there's real life litigation happening in the courts and everything else. But I've often found that these allegations stem from things they've done outside the show, just living their regular lives. This is where this comes from. But with the Michael Darby of it all, this happened while they were filming. I know we often talk about, things happening years ago, not when the cameras are on, not when filming is happening. But the reason for me, this is so significant and this is a very scandalous moment, is because this happened on screen.
Yes, they showed it. He loved to grab butts. And then remember that first season when Katie's boyfriend at the time was like, I think that guy just grabbed my butt.
Yes. You know what I mean? So like for me, it's not, Michael has a clear pattern, right? And it was quite interesting to kind of, read Ashley's point of view. But just to give you guys some context, just in case you forgot, I'm going to read the segment that Dave wrote to kind of tie things together. So he was saying, amid all the drama was an allegations that catapulted the Real Housewives of Potomac back into the headlines. 3 days after filming of Monique's rainbow baby shower, a cameraman claimed in court documents that Michael had grabbed and groped his butt. The allegations led Michael to be charged with felony assault as well as a misdemeanor for improper sexual contact. Now, Ashley says Michael and her had just gotten back together after being separated because, doing the show was super hard as a couple. And she was bringing up kind of like their private shit on television. Plus, they were working together on their business, which we know, you know, that whole restaurant situation. So she was saying, you know, it had kind of broken them up for a little bit. They were separated for a little bit, nothing major. They were just going through a bunch of stuff. And now they're back together, stronger than ever. Then this shit happens, right? But they didn't hear about it, as in the wives, until later on when the TMZ story broke. I mean, right. Isn't that crazy?
And this is what I think. As a gay man, this is what I think. And they even mentioned he would go around and grab like the gay members of the crew, their butts, right? Mm-hmm. And he reminds me of there's this genre of old man from a different time that could do that stuff and get away with it. And plus, I could see them, like him grabbing the butts of the gay men, and maybe they like it, maybe they're not, maybe they didn't, but they're like, ugh, it's just this old queen, whatever, and blowing it off. But he grabbed the butt of a straight guy, and the guy was like, no, this is not okay. Which I agree, you know, there's a whole consent thing, first of all, and you shouldn't go around grabbing anybody's butts. But I could see, as a gay man who has had my butt grabbed a gajillion times, if some dirty old man like that grabbed my butt, I would be like, yeah, whatever, and go on about my business, and it would not faze me. But if I was straight, yeah, it would faze me, because that's not my deal. And, you know, it's invading my space. So I could totally see it being a question of that. I'm just the guy being like, it's just this old queen, whatever.
Yeah, you know, and I think it's personal. You know, each person, you know, will feel how they feel. I don't think the feeling is standard. You know, we don't all feel the same way when we experience something. So I totally get it.
And just to be specific, just in case, listeners, I'm not saying it's okay for guys to go and grab a gay guy's butt. I'm not saying that.
Look, it's never okay. But my bottom line always is people react to things differently. You know, we all have different thresholds, different histories, different backgrounds. Some people might be like, no big deal. Other people, it might be triggering, or they might feel pressured. But the wives' reaction to it, right? So Giselle, she's just like, look, Michael's been grabbing butts since season 1. Candice said, well, other producers have shared that they've had their butts patted or grabbed by Michael, so they weren't surprised. You know, one of the producers said, you know, they heard off the record, you know, he grabbed a lot of butts from the gay men on the team, production team. Monique's position was interesting. And I think the other wives were super critical of her position, which is she felt bad for Ashley in that moment. You know, she, in my opinion, was being a friend to Ashley. She felt bad for her in that moment. And for Ashley, she was saying it was in that moment she realized Monique was a friend, and she was a real friend, because after everything they've gone through with Michael and that butt grabbing and the allegations in season 4, Monique tried to, she never used the opportunity as a storyline. And that's what Ashley appreciated, because it's true. Monique could have gone down a whole rabbit hole and ended up at the same conclusion, but she actually was a friend. I don't know how else to say it. She never did it for the cameras. She was just a real friend. However, and I found it very interesting, Candice's perspective on it all, because Candice is saying the only reason why she feels Monique stood by Ashley was because it made Monique look good. But for me, I disagree, because I think Monique's position was very unpopular. I mean, what did you think?
And, well, Ashley said herself on camera that she and Michael at one point had an open marriage. So boom. So of course, if you have an open marriage and your husband grabs someone's butt, of course you're not going to be mad. Of course not, because you already know the deal. And it sounds like he was doing things with other people and she was doing things with other people. So they had a deal, which, you know, the older I get, the more I learn about different people's relationships, and different people and different couples have different types of relationships and different types of rules. And, you know, so I'm sure it was more of a situation, not that he grabbed the butt, but that he grabbed the butt and got in trouble.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
I could see Monique hearing that and relating that and go, okay, girl, I get it. I got that.
See, yeah, because I think Ashley's relationship, and this is something we'll get into in the after show, but I think Ashley's relationship and her relationship status has always been up for debate. Are they in an open marriage? Are they in a closed marriage? Do they allow this? Do they do that? You know what I mean? And Ashley's always been very open, in my opinion. And the only thing I want to add on the Ashley of it all is that, as you mentioned, Les, the older you get, you learn, and you realize people operate in different ways. But another thing too is that nothing stays the same. So
Right.
People can change their minds. And so today it could be this, tomorrow it could be something else. And I don't mean that quickly, but you get my point. But before we go to the next big thing in this chapter, and I'm sticking on this Monique and Candice bit because, of course, one of the biggest things that happened in Potomac was their fight. But do you think Candice's point of view of Monique taking the position of being super supportive to Ashley during this moment was because it made her look good on the show, because it looked good for Monique on the show? Because this is what she said. The only reason Monique stood by Ashley's side after the butt tap was because it looked good for her on the show.
Well, okay, so full disclosure, you know how I said that this book made me like certain people more?
Yes.
This book also made me hate people more. And this, I never liked Candice. After reading this, I hate Candice. And just with the whole Monique Ashley thing, notice how Monique backed Ashley up, but then after the fight and the aftermath of the Monique Candice fight, Ashley backed Monique up as well. So I think they had a true friendship going.
I think that's also something on the show where you have two people who weren't friends before and they come on the show and, they're bonded by this experience. I truly believe Monique and Ashley have some sort of friendship.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're going over to each other's house every weekend, but, I think there's something there.
And you said it, even not love relationships change, friend relationships change.
Absolutely. I have to say though, I appreciate Candice. I have some thoughts on Candice, but I'm going to save them for whenever Candice writes her book. And
I can't stand her. I don't think she needs to be fired or anything, but I can't stand her.
No, I receive that. All right, you guys, the next big thing is that aftermath of the Candice and Monique Samuels fight. Okay, it's part of the reason why I was kind of hanging on that point of the Ashley Monique thing, because this fight was quite, it was quite a big one, and it was quite a big one. So season 5, just as a pointer, as we digress, season 5 ended up being a breakthrough year for the Real Housewives of Potomac. They had their highest ratings yet, and it's funny because Candice, going into the next season, she was on thin ice with a lot of people. There was a lot of tension with Candice. So yeah, to your point, I think, people weren't really feeling Candice in the show. However, the big thing happens, let me see, what page are we on? So the whole fight situation, I think it kind of starts from page 414. But it really gets into the meat of the matter on page 418, which is the legal back and forth between these two. Mm-hmm. So they had a fight, okay? There was a bunch of discussions after the fact. Candice then filed charges for second-degree assault, and Monique then shot back with filing charges of the same nature as well. Now, Candice's justification is that she didn't file anything for almost 2 weeks. She never planned to file anything. But after seeing Monique lie and lie and lie and putting things out there, she was like, you want to go to jail? You want to be publicly embarrassed because, you know, whatever. So that's when Candice decided to file charges. Now, Monique's, because this is just like an immediate conversation piece. Dave shared what Candice just said, what I just read in summary. And then Monique goes on to say, Candice filed a complaint against me knowing what it could do to my family. I have 3 kids and she has no guilt about it, no remorse, knowing fully well that she hit me with that glass. A week later, Monique filed countercharges. And in Candice's words, there will never be words to describe how vile, low, and disgusting Monique is for doing that. She's the lowest end of the totem pole of humanity. Before we even get into what happened, right, after the fact, but just working on the fact that a fight occurred between these 2 housewives, between Candice and Monique. Candice files charges 2 weeks later. Monique shots back with same charges a week after Candice's 2 weeks. And I just shared their thoughts in the book before we have a decision on what happened with those charges. But what were your thoughts, Celeste, like really reading, recounting this, living it again? I mean, what is she thinking?
I'm going to preface this. I do not condone violence. And I'm coming from someone who has a big mouth. I have a big mouth too. Mm-hmm. But here's the deal, Candice. If you get into someone's face, if they haul off and pop you, that's not right. But if you're gonna get into someone's face, you gotta know that you run the risk of getting popped. It doesn't make it right, but when you go into it and you do that, you got to know that when you poke the bear, because Candice did poke the bear may or may not bite you. And after you poke the bear, if that bear bites you, the bear was in the wrong for biting you, but you weren't completely 100% innocent either because you're the one that poked it. And when you poked it, that was the risk that you ran. Boom. That's how I feel about that. I hope that made sense. Because she was in Monique's face. She was. And but they were both, and I'm not saying either because Monique was not innocent either. Nobody was innocent on this.
So here's the thing now. I was just super fascinated reading Andy's point of view in all of this. Because Andy was like, we don't like when this happens. It's a bad look. This isn't Bad Girls Club. This is not Love and Hip Hop, and so on. Monique's point of view is Andy was really there for her when it happened. She didn't feel like she was getting support from anyone. Candice was saying, do you know, Andy never ever reached out to me ever, not until the airing of the season when I was on Watch What Happens Live. And she was very upset because she heard that he had spoken to Monique. What's interesting is Monique was the one who had called Andy, you know what I mean? So It was fascinating to me that Candice felt some type of way. I'm like, well, did you call him?
Because Candice was a jerk, and Monique put her big girl panties on and said, I did this, and I'm going to take responsibility for this, and so I need to call my boss and speak to my boss about this.
Right. So, yeah, it's super interesting because, you know, Candice's point of view of Andy was not favorable.
Can I say one more thing?
Go on.
So Candace's behavior on social media in general, and this has nothing to do with this, Candace is the most vile person on social media that there is. Candace, and once again, this is coming from someone with a big mouth who, like, you know, when I argue with someone, all bets are off. Candace towards other people is like disgusting sometimes with things that she says to people. Like, did you hear like about the one incident and we can get into this in the after show where she was arguing with someone and she says, "I hope you kill yourself," and the person killed themselves.
Yeah.
You know, so she's not like, it's not like she's like some innocent person in all this. She's got a track record.
Y'all, all I'm gonna say on the before the legal decision was made, Candace is feeling really burnt by a lot of people. She didn't feel like Andy supported her. She didn't feel like production supported her, network supported her. She felt like Bravo didn't care about her or the situation and so on. But yeah, and here's the thing, before reading this book, because I've been a fan of both Monique and Candace. So seeing that fight play out on television was super hard. Now, my gut reaction in that moment was I was Team Monique, like the second it happened. And again, I'm a huge Candace fan, but my gut reaction in that moment was I'm Team Monique. I didn't like the way her other cast members were treating her.
Right.
Because they were really icing Monique out. And I think in that moment, that's the reason I was Team Monique as well. It's like the fight happened, I'm like Team Monique. They're icing her out, I'm like Team Monique. The only person who's trying to be a middle person, who Candace also gave her shit for it, was Karen. You know, it felt super childish to me, right. Candace's behavior. Now, after some time, you know, removed from the show, removed from the situation, I've been listening to what other people are saying about Candace, because again, I'm a big Candace fan. If I could choose a Potomac housewife to produce, I would choose Candace, because I don't think she knows how to tell her story. And I think I could do it well, because I think having a housewife like Candace is important on the show. She provides a different dimension. I like the fact that she's a young Black woman from generational wealth who, you know, didn't really need a come up. I think that story is important to see. I just don't think she's doing a good job with it. So I would love to produce Candace. So Candace, if you're listening, you know, truly original, the girl needs help. But anyway, I digress. But reading the book, so remember, Team Monique got reaction. After the fact, I'm like, I feel it for Candace. Reading the book, I'm like, no, Candace, you're dead wrong, girl. You're dead wrong. It made Candace seem so entitled. It was hard for me to read it because, again, Candace fan here, but it was super hard. She was saying Andy never called her. She said, she left messages for Andy. Andy was like, I never got a message. I would have called her back. She also says that she told Andy that, you know, you don't give a fuck about me, don't give a fuck about us, you're making money off our backs, you know, kind of a whole rant.
So she goes into that.
And then Andy was like, if she told me that to my face, that I didn't give a fuck about her, I would remember it. And I don't. What I do remember was her being upset that he had spoken to Monique. So, I mean, everything that's being recounted here has me looking at Candace sideways. Now, I found Andy's position quite interesting because he was saying that his point of view on the fight was skewed because of what happened with Kenya and Portia. So I found it super interesting, that comparison. What did you think?
I get it. I get it. Because, you know, it was kind of, because, and, you know, we say things are nuanced. The Kenya Portia fight was so nuanced, you know, because the Kenya Portia fight, Kenya started it, but Portia threw hands.
Yeah. So see, that's what I'm saying. I found that comparison quite interesting, and so on. But their sticking point with Monique, it seems to be the fact that Monique took it further. She went on social media, you know, she was cussing everyone out. And that's their
but even though they still invited her back.
I know. See, okay, because we're going to wrap this conversation up, and my last point is about Monique not returning. But you guys, I thought it was, look, I understand these housewives make decisions on what's best for them and their families, but I really wish Monique had returned to Potomac.
I do too.
For me, as a viewer, I mean, again, I don't care. You could be Team Candice, Team Monique. And as someone who loves seeing both these women on the show, I do. It broke my heart that Monique chose not to return to the show. I think she should have come back, even if it's just for one more season, and then call it quits.
Yeah.
I didn't like the fact that she left. Part of me felt like Candice got away because of that.
Yes.
You know, and I wanted Candice to have to not confront Monique. I'm not saying I wanted them to sit down and have this kumbaya moment, but because Monique never returned, Candice just, in my opinion, skated off.
Yes. And we learned that next season, she didn't learn anything from her behavior. She didn't learn a thing.
We're going to be talking about it in the after show. You guys, we're going to be talking about it in the after show.
She learned nothing.
I know. But the last point, the last big thing in this Potomac chapter is actually on the last 2 pages. So if you're reading with us, it's page 420. This is the last point. We're going to be dishing tea in the after show. But I couldn't close this chapter, literally, without touching the Monique part of it. So on page 420, it's really hammering into the why Monique left. Now, Candice starts off, so Andy, let me start with Andy. No, let me start with production. They said they offered Monique a chance to return for season 6. She likened the situation to the Phaedra and Candy in season 9, because after Phaedra got fired, a lot of viewers felt like they were robbed of an ending to that story, which is kind of what I just said. And fans wanted to go on a journey with Monique and Candice, allowing them to see what would happen next. Would they make up? Could they coexist? Production really wanted to explore that. Andy said he would have never imagined that we would be considering bringing Monique back. But when you looked at public opinion, it wasn't that cut and dry. So I found it very interesting that Andy was kind of like on the opposite, saying he never imagined they would consider bringing her back. Candice's position was she was never going to film with her again. She was struggling, Candice was struggling as to whether she even wanted to come back to the show. But in the end, she decided she was not going to let this, and I'm quoting from Candice, y'all, these are not my words, but she was not going to let this gutter trash brat fuck with my money. So that was Candice's point of view. And Monique's point of view was saying, there was no way I was moving forward with Candice. I tried to move forward with her at the last reunion, and no sooner than we started filming again did she start being shady. Karen's point of view was that a great deal of humility and accountability would have been required for them to move on. Karen feels they could have done it, but it would have been hard, obviously. And Monique wishes none of this had happened. She wished she would have walked away. She never realized it would have escalated the way it did, but you know, she's living with it. So yeah, that was season 5. That was the end of the Monique and Candice, and Monique kind of really shares in here. So you guys can just read those sections and those bits as to why she left. Les, my question to you is, 1, Candice, still with the name calling, you know, in the book, calling her, let me find it again, gutter trash brat. So yeah, and then also, you know, Monique with the decision to leave. It's clear production felt how I felt by saying I wanted to see how this would, you know, kind of wrap up, what would happen. I mean, how did you feel?
Well, first of all, Candace learned nothing. And so I do wish that I think if Monique would have come back, Candace would have been held accountable for her part. And so since Monique left, Candace was not held accountable for her part, hence how she talked to me all crazy the next season. And so, yeah, I agree with you. I wish that Monique would have come back, because without Monique coming back, everything was kind of just left up in the air. And Candace then could control the narrative however she wanted, which she did.
And I'm going to be talking in the after show more about the Candace of it all, season 6 of Potomac, after obviously Monique chose not to return to the show. So yeah, I'm super excited to kind of dig in deeper with all these housewives from Potomac. We're going to be talking more about the Chesapeake babes over in the after show. You can join us at the after show over on Patreon. Okay.
And I would like to give a special shout out to our new Patreon member, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Fatuma Beli. I hope and if I didn't pronounce it, I apologize, and let me know how to pronounce it properly. But Fatuma is our newest Patreon member, and welcome. And you too can become a Patreon member. Just look for us on Patreon at The Reality Reading Rainbow. And and you get to listen to our fabulous after show, which is where we get down and dirty.
Yes, really excited, and I hope to see you guys there next week. We will be wrapping up Not All Diamonds and Rose. Again, I know this feels like we've been talking about it forever and ever and ever, but next episode we will be talking about the Real Housewives of Dallas.
And of course, if you want to find us, you can find us on Facebook at The Reality Reading Rainbow. You can follow us on Instagram at The Reality Reading Rainbow. And if you want to drop us a line, say hello, recommend books, you could either do it on Insta or Facebook, or you can shoot us off an email at therealityreadingrainbow@gmail.com.
Yay!
And we got to go because we got an after show to do. So if you're coming to the after show, we'll see you over there. If you're not, then we'll see you next week, and keep reading.
Bye.
Bye.